When AI is nothing, that's when it's everything. How do I use Gen AI to make a customer do XYZ? That's when the disaster starts happening, because you start putting it in places where it wasn't needed. Nobody is allowed to use the word generative AI. Biggest advantage of AI is that it's perfectly rational, lacks any kind of emotion. And that's where its biggest disadvantage comes in also, right? It's perfectly rational, lacks emotion, but you're building products for emotional human beings. So I think it's going to be a combination of the two.
Okay.
It's going to be product managers enabled by AI that will succeed, right? Because if as a product manager I have skill 80, AI can take me to 90, 95 with very little effort from my end. Biggest problem with generative AI is that each generation is unique. Right? Each response by the AI is unique.
Exactly.
Right? So even if no matter tested 100 times, the 101st test will be very different. A lot of them will fail, and then spend a lot of time analyzing the failures.
Okay.
And not so much the successes. In Gen AI, the tech changes so fast, right? Like you can have 2 weeks later, you can be like, oh damn, like everything I built for the last 1 year is not relevant anymore with this new approach.
Welcome back to Behind the Feature. Today, we're actually diving into the beautiful world of AI. Exciting guest who's been at the forefront of this technology for over 10 years. AI is actually changing the way in which we live and the way that we work. In the last few years, I don't think you could imagine the kind of things that AI can do today. It can understand images, it can play chess with you, it can actually write my speeches too. The thing that actually was intriguing me for a while was, while we have AI all around us, how is it that we can actually use AI to build products that are impactful and actually useful for users? I'm super excited to actually welcome the guest that we have today. He's a friend. I've known him for over 10 years, and we were to go to ISB together, and he decided he was way too cool to come to B School with us. And he's doing some killer stuff in the last decade. He is the CEO and co-founder of Fluid AI. Interesting stuff in generative AI. And they work with some of the biggest global companies in the world, and I couldn't be more excited to have Abhinav today. Welcome to the show, Abhinav.
Thank you.
And can you share a bit about yourself beyond the fact that you actually dropped out of ISB?
Yeah, I mean, it has been a fun journey for sure. So I started out more as a finance guy actually. So I studied commerce, I was a big fin guy, I did my chartered accountancy. And that's, I think a year before I did my chartered accountancy, the tech bug kind of caught me. So I wrote my first program. It was just a really silly, like a Fibonacci sequence, and just having the power to write something and have it print a Fibonacci up till 1 million, you could feel the power in your hands, right? Like, oh my God, there's so much you can do in just 30 minutes. Imagine what 10 years you can do. So I think that's when we started coding. I started coding, then Raghav, my brother, also joined me. And we should just do fun coding, fun hacks, building out stuff. Initially, we built something for schools and colleges.
Okay.
So we built a learning management solution, because that was the problem we were closest to, right? How do you share homework? How do you submit assignments online?
How old were you when you did this?
I was in my 10th standard.
Seriously?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we in fact built this platform where you can share exam papers online with each other.
God,
like a YouTube of exam papers. Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah. I think then we kind of also started thinking, okay, this is great. That scaled actually as a business as well. But then we started thinking, what can we do that's interesting, can help us differentiate from like a behemoth of 1,000 people, 10,000 people with TCS and all, like a lakh person company. And at the same time, can it be something that we are personally passionate about?
Okay.
So back in 2011, we came across neural networks that time. That was the Gen AI or 10 years ago, right?
Yes.
What was it?
It still is the basis.
It's still the base, yeah. But that time, how everyone's talking about Gen AI, everyone used to be like neural networks. So I kind of came across this code, and then the idea that, okay, you can write something and you don't tell it how to solve a problem, but you just give it the results and it's learning backwards and solving it.
Right.
That just blew our minds. So we kind of then from there said, okay, this is a great focus area. We could see a company of like a 50 or 100% company beating a big person company at something like this. And that's why we said, okay, this is a great space. So then we kind of doubled down on it. Then ISB happened at that time, but the business was also growing simultaneously. So kind of took that call saying, okay, no, let's focus in, work on more interesting tech. And then that journey kind of just took us on, then we did some interesting stuff for Warren Buffett. We built a lot of interesting stuff for AI. And I think over the last 3-4 years, we've only been focusing on generative AI. And I think now those dividends are really paying for us.
Recently, Mustafa, who's the CEO of Microsoft AI, he actually mentioned something very interesting. He said, if I have to define AI, and he gave a very interesting metaphor. He said, it is akin to being a new digital species.
Okay.
It's almost like having a digital life companion who's alongside you. And I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah.
Over the last 18 months, more than 1 billion people have used large language models.
Right.
Can you share first what is a large language model?
Yeah, for sure.
To someone like my father. And what is AI anyway?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think AI kind of gets this very funky rap because you see it in a lot of sci-fi, right? And everyone's talking about this super intelligent thing that's doing a bunch of things in movies and ends up deciding that it has to kill all humankind, which is how most sci-fi movies end with. But I think at the core foundation, right, it's, when people talk about AI, they usually talk about 3 words that we've seen, or three phrases that we've seen always come up, right? There's machine learning, there's deep learning, and now the new kid on the block is generative AI. Each is kind of foundational to base from the other. You would just take a lot of data and you would say, I want to, let's say, predict something, right? Let's say you want to predict, if you're a bank, let's say hypothetically, and you want to predict if someone's going to default, like is Deeksha going to default on her loan, right? So the bank would say, okay, let me label all my data, right? This person defaulted in the past, this person didn't default, these 10 didn't default, and let me give them all the data about them. Right, so their income, where they stay, how many family members they have. And then you tell an algorithm, learn stuff from this, right? That was machine learning. And it would tell you the decision, what its prediction is, and it would tell you whether, the reason, right? I think this person is going to default because their income is too low. Then came deep learning where they said, okay, let's make this model more complex. That's all, right? Make it more complex, so we want
more parameters.
Yes, more parameters essentially. And the accuracy went up. So perfect, okay, better accuracy. Now it can't tell you why it took a decision. It will just say, I think this person will default, but don't ask me why.
Okay.
Right? It's like a black box. So great, because accuracy went up, right? So more value delivery at the end of the day. But the biggest problem with both these methodologies is that you have to label all the data.
Okay.
Right? So you have to go literally and give it labeled data, which is called supervised data, but it just means that you're telling the AI, this happened because of this. Right, now learn this, and that's a very complex activity, right?
It used to take a lot of time.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, right? So you have to go, like, even if your organization, I want to predict the best performer, I have to go sit, label everyone, and then give the AI or the model access to that. That was the old way of doing things. When generative AI came, they said and there were these other techniques, but I won't get into the nitty-gritties of it. But philosophical way of thinking was, can we train the same deep learning model, but in a way that it doesn't need labeled data?
Okay.
Or, it doesn't need the outcome to learn.
That's what they mean, unsupervised?
Exactly, unsupervised. It's a fancy word for, unsupervised learning is a fancy word for this. Don't give me don't give me the output label, basically.
Okay.
Or the prediction.
So I just dump all my
I just dump my data, and can it learn? And with GenAI, they were able to achieve it. And that suddenly changes the scale, right? Because with deep learning and machine learning, more data you give it, the better. Right. But you're restricted because you have to label all the data. Now you're saying, don't label anything. So now they could just give it the whole internet, right? Just read everything, and the AI is learning. And that's where generative AI really changed the game. That's where the scale of these models has suddenly become a lot bigger, because now you have a lot more training data. And that's where their performance or their humanistic characteristic has gone up.
Okay.
But when you look at a large language model, fundamentally it's just doing next word prediction in a sentence. Like, you'll give it a sentence and you'll ask it to predict the next word, and the model's learning from that.
Okay.
So at the other side, when you see how the model actually works, it's pretty dumb. Right? It's literally like if you say the cat is going to jump over and then it's going to predict the word fence.
Okay.
Right? And then it'll predict the next word if the sentence has more words to it. So that's the basis of the model. But when you start training them at large scale, they start to show a little more intelligence, which is what we see in like a ChatGPT or any of these LLM models, where they're still kind of slot filling the next word, but they're doing it so intelligently that they start to replicate human reasoning somewhere.
And at the speed at which they do it.
Yes, and they do it really, really fast.
Yes. So my question to you would be now more around product.
Yeah.
We used to build products in the traditional sense. No, this is a problem. This is, I'm designing the solution and then I'm building it. It's very run of the mill.
Correct.
How does it differ now with AI coming in?
Yeah. So I think the previous era of product managers, with the tools that they had, I wouldn't even say the previous era, the same era of product managers, but with the previous era of tools that they had, the best they could do with AI was at that time, like, can I be more predictive about the user's behavior?
Okay.
Right. So can my UI adapt slightly because I know the customer always clicks here. So can I ensure that option's already pre-filled based on what is it studying? Is studying your past analytics behavior, right? Every time this user logs in, he does this. Every time the user, users of this age typically do this, all labeled data, right? You could do these kind of predictions. What GenAI enables them to do now is that it takes all that fuzzy stuff that a customer needs to do on a product and it makes it easily doable in English or like in a pure language, not even in English, but just
give me like an example.
So, because let's take an example, right? Let's take a mass emailing software, like a newsletter software, right? Like a MailChimp or something like that, right? And every time your face was you logged in, and so the user knows what he wants to do, right? And then every time what is a user doing when he logs into a platform? He's thinking what he wants to do, and now he's thinking, okay, based on this screen in front of me, I want to launch a newsletter that sends X mail to all my customers that are below 30 years of age because I'm launching a new product, so I want to send this newsletter out. I've thought this, now I see this UI and I have to figure out from this UI how do I achieve the thought that I've had. But with GenAI you can skip that step altogether, right? Because I can just go into the UI, type in I want to create a newsletter and this and the LLM is understanding what you're saying, converting it to a structured format that the product or the system at the back can understand and executing it for you and then showing it up in a UI.
Right.
Like, okay, this is your newsletter, it's ready. I've also pre-drafted an email based on the audience and now I've kind of, added all the filters for age and this, and then you're ready. Now you have to say, do you want to send or do you want to modify? That is a fundamentally different experience from what a product manager would be focusing on earlier, right? Which was more traditional UI, UX, where should the screens be, what should my tutorial look like, what should this look like, right? And this was only possible in the last 2 years. It's not possible before that, the tech wasn't there.
Right.
So it's a fundamental philosophical change of the way you look at UI now, and UX, and the way you look at product as well.
So I'm going to hold the thought here and I will come back to the UI, UX because I think it's extremely important. Recently in one of your speeches and chats, you actually said when AI is nothing is when AI is something.
Is everything.
Is everything.
Yeah.
As you said, the moment Gen AI came in, everyone just like scrapped their old product plans and their strategy and they said, hey, let's rework. How is it that companies do not use AI just for the wow factor, but actually build meaningful solutions that solve real world user problems? What is some of your advice?
Yeah. So I think the biggest problem that happened, right, is the mistake. So two good things happened when GenAI launched, right? One was everyone threw out their roadmaps. That was a good thing. Because there's new tech available, new things you can do, right? The bad thing that happened was everyone threw out their roadmaps. And they started redesigning the roadmaps with this new question, which was coming from the top sometimes.
Put GenAI.
Yeah. How do I use GenAI to make my product better?
Right.
Or to help solve my customer's problem, right? And that statement probably makes almost every project manager go like, ugh, because it's like you've literally put the solution in the first half of the sentence, which is like as a design thinking specialist, as a product manager, right? You're the first training you're given or a customer design experience person, you're told like, don't do this, right? This is like the 101 of every class for a product manager. Don't put the solution first. And literally everyone was forced to do it sometimes. So I think that's the biggest mistake, and that's why this statement, right, when AI is nothing, that's when it's everything kind of comes in. Because the minute you make AI nothing, right, we say, okay, we have this tech that can enable us, but put it on the side for 5 minutes. Now let's see what our product allows a customer to do. Right? Go back to the MailChimp example. Like our product allows an entrepreneur to reach out to his audience efficiently, better, at scale, right, with great messaging, to communicate his message more effectively, right? That's the problem set. You sit with that now and say, now I have a whole new set of tools that can enable me to solve this problem. That's when you get a great roadmap. But when you sit, when your roadmap becomes, how do I use Gen AI to make a customer do X, Y, Z? That's when the disaster starts happening, because you start putting it in places where it wasn't needed. So when it becomes nothing, that's when it's everything.
What are some of your tips to actually stay away from making it everything?
I think to ensure that, like we have this rule, like in the first 5 minutes of a product discussion, nobody is allowed to use the word generative AI.
Are you serious?
In the discussion, right? Because the minute someone will be there in that room, right? You might not be the person, but there will always be someone in that room who will be, should we use Gen AI for this, right? Or what is the Gen AI perspective? So I think those kind of things help. I think also knowing the true capability of the tool set, right? So there's this other extreme challenge that happens where people have seen its potential, but sometimes people take it too far, right? People think it's going to be like, we've not reached that stage where it's like the Matrix level AI or the movies level, right? But people imagine it that way now. So when they're building product, they're sitting and they're like, oh, but what if AI could like predict what the customer, like just from his history, thinking is even more extreme. That's like, I think for the Neuralink guys to work, and they're working on it. So yeah, we probably will have to, shut our mouths if they come out with some great announcement next week. But I think it's just about, not ensuring that you don't get too carried away with what's possible. Like some people come up with ideas like, oh, it should read your email and then understand you as a person and your audience, and then go ahead and decide what kind of newsletter you're going to send out, and then do this and then do that. And then you suddenly, it can do that, but it'll do like a really shitty job of a lot of these elements. So then you've pushed it too far. And then your product team tries to build it, and then you get this hacky version out in market that's kind of doing things, but it's not really solving the problem, and it's creating more confusion. So then it becomes over Gen AI'd product, like over engineered. So this is like over Gen AI'd version of the product. So those are the two traps sitting on the extreme end.
Lenny recently, which is one of my favorite podcasts that I do watch, is he did a poll where he said, will Gen AI replace product managers? And he kind of put out like 3 tasks on the internet, and he created one with AI and one with human. And he asked people, he did a poll on X, and he said, hey, tell me which is a better solution. And out of those 3 tasks, out of those, the 2 out of 3 was actually where AI was what people chose, was actually AI generated. Do you actually think that in a few years we will not require product managers?
So I think the biggest advantage of AI is that it's perfectly rational, lacks any kind of emotion, and that's where its biggest disadvantage comes in also, right? It's perfectly rational, lacks emotion, but you're building products for emotional human beings, right? I don't think it's going to replace a product manager. I don't think you're going to reach a stage where you're going to be like in a short set of examples, it's great, right? Like you show it, like you give it a very narrow problem, and you say design a product to do X, and make a UI screen for me, and then it might do it also, or design a product requirement document for me. It'll do a good job at a very narrow problem. But when you look at product and companies, the problem scale is much larger, right? Like imagine telling an AI something like, okay, design the product strategy for like Dropbox is this new product, like, or for Dropbox in general, right? It's just too many factors, human elements, market, and you'll try and fit this in that LLM prompt, right? This is the market, this is what happened in the past. Like it's just going to be a disaster. So I think it's going to be a combination of the two. It's going to be product managers enabled by AI that will succeed, right? Because if as a product manager I have skill 80, AI can take me to 90, 95 with very little effort from my end. I'm just leveraging an additional tool in my toolkit. It's like what Figma did to design, product design, right? So it's just going to help me think of ideas, think of situations that I didn't think better, craft what I'm thinking in a better format, almost become like a sounding board, and kind of help analyze ideas within the team, process them faster, stuff like that, like kind of create fake personas to bounce, your thought process off of.
Because when you have Gen AI,
Yeah.
obviously even the way that you test some of these products, it has to be a different approach. I don't think you do run-of-the-mill approach. What are some of the ways in which Fluid AI actually tests some of these?
Yeah. So I think that, and that's, as a product manager, this is the biggest problem with generative AI, is that each generation is unique. Right, each response by the AI is unique.
Exactly.
Right, so even if no matter tested 100 times, the 101th test will be very different. So your traditional, regression test, and your testing team comes in, and they have that standard metrics built in, and they're ticking boxes. Suddenly it's very different. Like, how do you test? Like, how do you test for this scenario?
Yeah.
Now you're like, oh, what if the user phrased the sentence this way, or he did it this way? So you want to probably test 10,000 cases. And then those cases will each have their own unique output to it. So what we do is, first pass, we actually put another Gen AI in front. So one LLM that's generating the output.
Okay.
And there's a separate LLM that's evaluating the output. Let's go back to this use case, the newsletter one only, since we kind of established the context there, right? You're now, as a product manager, kind of setting up a test for this, right? What then can you've given them a free text box, which is every product manager's nightmare, right? What can the customer type, and what will the AI respond? Saying, okay, sometimes the AI has to prompt back to the user as well. I'm sending a new newsletter, customer age is this, but now the system doesn't have access to age only. Then how will it ensure that it's sending out the newsletter to age under 30? So you'll come up with these examples, but you'll have an AI analyze or process whether the action that the LLM took was right or wrong.
And how do you train this second L?
It just uses common sense.
Okay,
That's
so
it.
there's no special data.
There's no
or
special
training that's
data.
sitting
No.
there.
It's just told like you are like an intelligent, or like whatever your persona is actually.
Okay.
You are a persona of this. Does this response make sense to you?
Okay.
Did it do what it suggested you? Were you happy with this or not? And then the LLM is evaluating it. So then your cases can go very big, and it gets auto-evaluated. Then you get like a nice set of negative cases that then your teams can sit around a table and analyze. Okay, each one. What should be done? Should the AI change its behavior? Is it fine? Should we leave it as it is?
You've shared some of these examples on testing that was pretty interesting. Can you actually share an example with us where Fluid AI has actually tackled a complex problem and with a solution that even surprised your team?
Yeah, so I think one of the bigger ones, the biggest challenge we used to face when we were trying to automate customer support is that customers would have to always choose, and I think everyone has done this, right? They've always had to choose between self-service, which is, should I talk to a chatbot, should I try and install the app and try and self-serve my way out of this problem? And then, do I call the call center, like traditional channel, do I call up the call center, and probably there's a higher probability of solve there, but a lot of waiting time. Here, lower probability of solve, but then instant gratification, right? I get it solved. So, when we were automating a lot of these call centers using generative AI, like an enterprise GPT is what we build, right? And it kind of understands everything about like it's a bank, for example, right? All their product information, all their other systems it's connected to, so it can solve anything. We were, like, the team was taking an approach of saying, okay, customer calls, the AI picks up the call. Okay. And solves the problem of the customer. If it can't, it hands it over to the agent. But we realized also that along this journey, there are a lot of power users who'd love talking to an AI. Right, who will be probably the self-serve kind, right? The newer generation who just wants to do self-serve. So we try to put both of these in one experience, right? So imagine a customer goes on to self-serve. He's talking to the chatbot, trying to solve his issue. There's a little call button there. He can choose directly to hit the call button. If he hits it, an AI picks up, figures out what's the real issue, or it can understand it from the transcript itself that the person's chatted with. And if it can solve it, it will solve it. If it can't, it will do a transfer to the agent. Now the agent is talking to you, live agent from the call center, through that same chatbot experience essentially. So you literally have like one UI and one place the customer goes, whether on the app or on the website. And he's doing the entire end-to-end journey of solving his issue.
Right.
And that we found like customers loved it. Like that experience was flawless.
So, you mentioned UI, and when, unlike other technologies, people are still getting used to having Gen AI. Today, when I use Gemini, when I open Gmail, it's like, hey, how can I help you today,
Yeah.
right? Small prompts like that, or whether you use Canva and you use the magic editor feature. How is it that you actually prioritize these UI impact, when you're actually designing these user journeys?
Yeah, absolutely. I think UI is often for us the one of the most key elements for that interaction to be like amazing to deliver that final value. And what we've done is, so when a customer starts their interaction journey, so the AI will imagine what we do as a core is almost like an enterprise GPT, right? So it's an AI that's ingested everything about your organization, all its documentation, it's connected to all your systems. So you can just go and talk to it, right? Like tell me about this product X of ours and what variants we have. Or you could do a support problem, like customer X is facing this issue with this product. Now what do I do, right? And the AI would give the answer, and it would also give the sources where it's kind of got the answer from, right? Okay, here's the answer, and these are the sources. Now a lot of times users would, Chat GPT has this problem where sometimes it will make up stuff, right? Like the hallucination or Gemini and all, like they all struggle with this little bit of hallucination that comes in where it'll just say an answer that doesn't exist, right? And so users, we realized, because they've all come from that world where they're always using all these tools, even when our tool was answering it, even though it's grounded in their knowledge, it's built for that, there was this worry that what if it's made up, right? Yes. Or what if it's not true? And the system was built to auto block all of this. But once we did three simple things, right? One was we introduced a little bit of a green tick. So the AI in real time, once the answers come out, it would get revalidated against all the sources. And then if it's valid, a little green tick would show up. So saying this is double verified.
Okay.
That gave us a lot of user confidence. Like when we did our customer NPS surveys, like at least 30% improvement in customers feeling that the answers are accurate, even though we didn't change anything. So start feeling it's more accurate. Then we went a step further and we said, okay, the sources that they're showing, say the AI is answering and it's saying I use these 5 documents to come up with the answer. Usually 2 or 3 of the documents would have the meat of the answer. So we started showing percentages of the relevance of that document.
Okay.
So if I'm asking, like a complex question, let's take a banking example again, like a credit card division, right? If a customer rolls back if it rolls back a transaction after 30 days, then what's the dispute mechanism? And there are answers from 5 documents will show up in the search, like any search, right? Multiple documents show up. So the AI answers, below it are the references. You start showing percentages. Okay, this document has 80% of the content has come from this document.
Okay.
Part of the percentage of the answers come from this document. So they know in real time where the reference is.
So you're referencing it
with percentages. So the key difference was the percentages gave them a lot more validation of, where is this answer spread out. So when they click it, it goes to the relevant page, which means that you open the source, it goes to the relevant page, highlights that section. So that UI journey essentially reinforced that confidence that, okay, even if I don't trust the AI, which still a lot of users don't, they can go and validate it in real time and not spend a lot of time doing it, right? In 10 seconds, I can do the entire validation journey.
Right.
From question to validation. And that I feel was a big UI leap that really transformed usage.
So I want to ask you is, now where you're sitting, what are some of the potential opportunities that you see for businesses with generative AI?
Businesses in general are going to see a phenomenal change over the next 1 year. Essentially take talent which is less specialized, slightly sometimes less skilled in that particular art that they've been employed in.
Okay.
And still give you the same quality output as long as the talent has good common sense and just a passion to deliver. They'll be able to do things that you couldn't imagine earlier, and that I feel is going to really change the way an organization functions as a whole completely, right?
What are some of the top 3 things that businesses should do to prepare themselves for AI?
So I think the biggest thing that they should try and do is deploy something, right? There's this very interesting story. It's from World War II. So they used to have these fighter jets, like the old style ones, right? They used to fly over the English Channel, come back, do reconnaissance missions, throw heavy artillery, and then fly back. And then so there was this bunch of data scientists that said, okay, we want to improve the return rate, like how many of these planes come back successfully. So about 60% would come back. So what they did was they said, okay, we'll analyze all these planes, all the planes that have come back, and they built a little heat map of where the bullet holes are showing up, right? So they built this little beautiful heat map. So heat map would show, okay, the center body of the plane, lots of bullet dents are there. The top, probably nothing is there. Edge of wings, nothing is there. The tail has a lot of the bullet marks. And they said, let's reinforce all these areas, right?
I know this one.
Yeah. And then they reinforced all of them. They sent it back, and nothing absolutely changed, right? The error rate was like the number of planes flying back was exactly the same. And then they realized the mistake that they did was they are only analyzing the successful planes, right? So essentially these are planes that made it back. So you should probably have analyzed planes that didn't make it back. And you had to do the exact opposite, right? Wherever the bullet holes are there, that means the plane survived.
Right.
You have to reinforce the other areas. And that's when it became really good. So I think the same approach applies with AI. Like deploy a bunch of very small things in your organization. A lot of them will fail, and then spend a lot of time analyzing the failures and not so much the successes. Because I think that's when as a product manager or generally as an organization, you will start to learn what works, what doesn't work. And just be okay with that process of just failing a lot of times while deploying it. Your first GenAI implementation probably won't deliver any value to the customer, but your third, fourth will deliver immense if you learn from the mistake. So I think that's a big one that people should look at for sure, like deploy, test, and iterate. Two is, we've covered a little bit of this, is don't lose sight of the customer. Right. Don't lose sight of the problem that you're trying to solve, right? Sometimes it actually doesn't make sense to look at GenAI and the maturity of the PM to step in and realize that that is the situation. We're trying to use a bazooka to kill this tiny ant. It's very important that they kind of understand it. So don't just add like a free text box in your product. Just because it might not make sense. It might confuse your customer even more. Right? And then there's a lot of frustration. If someone spent time in a journey and then it doesn't work flawlessly, then they get very frustrated. And three is, I think, differentiate between generative AI and traditional AI. Machine learning, deep learning. I think people sometimes just take it as one big item.
Yes.
So if you have stuff where you're dealing with a lot of text, your product has a lot of text either generated out, or even customers are giving briefs, or they would rather give briefs than click things. Those are great use cases for generative AI within product. But if you're doing something like predictive analytics, or your product's trying to kind of analyze customer behavior, then use traditional AI. Like have that differentiation that, am I using Gen AI or am I needing traditional AI? And don't just say, okay, we're going to use AI for this, because that could be very confusing to a lot of people.
Right. So what would be the skills that I should actually now go in and actually upskill myself, which you think will be important?
So I think two things. One that I think people take a little lightly or think that it won't add value is maybe do a course on foundation, not like a technical course, like don't learn to program an LLM. This is a waste of time if you're not a coder. But to just understand or watch a few videos and understanding how these algorithms work.
Okay.
Because until you don't understand that first principle of what it is doing underneath the hood, right, it kind of starts like you'll not be able to imagine the right possibilities, and then your tech team will keep coming back and saying, yeah, this is not possible, and this is not making sense, and you'll keep struggling with why this made sense versus why this said I thought was not possible. Now they're saying this will happen in 5 minutes, and this I thought was possible, and they're saying it's impossible. It's kind of like that really funny thing. There was this really nice XKCD comic on this where there's a PM who's giving like instructions to this coder and saying, okay, build this, build that. And this was before Gen AI and like the image recognition, so pre-2020 came out. And he said, okay, now what do you call? So she's saying, yeah, this will take 1 day. She's kind of doing that Scrum thing. This will take 3 days. Decide. So he's saying, okay, now next task is identify whether there's a bird in this image or not. And what type of bird it is.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, that'll take me 5 years because this is like a really complex deep learning problem suddenly.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, but the other like 1 day to 5 years, like what's happening, right? So I think if you understand the foundational tech, just the basis of how it works, how GPT is just an next word predictor, etc., stuff like that, it really hones your ability to build tech that will or build a product that really works in the real world.
Okay, we're just going to do one last section, which is the rapid fire.
Okay.
I am going to ask you, and you have to give me answers in 1 line maximum.
Okay.
So,
So like you're going to prompt me and to generate and
get your AI in place. What is the biggest misconception about AI in the workplace?
that it's going to solve all my intelligent problems for me. And it's going to replace me in the next 6 months.
Oh, 6 months, but
Yeah.
you're saying eventually it might, no?
Yeah, I mean for the simpler roles, like I said, right? Like it's going to assist more than replace.
One task that AI will never replace entirely.
I think being running a company, like being the CEO.
Oh, saving his own job.
I think because I relate to it so closely.
So I think you've answered this, but what is that essential skill for future workplace?
I think essential skill is adaptability, ability to learn, and ability to use tools.
And what is the biggest challenge that companies are going to face in an AI-powered workplace?
Being too afraid to disrupt themselves and the way they do things.
Traditional.
Yeah.
One word to describe the future of work.
The Matrix.
Oh wow. So then that gets me, what is your favorite sci-fi movie that depicts AI? Because you said Matrix twice.
Yeah, I would have probably said The Matrix, but I think iRobot.
Yeah?
Yeah, because we're literally, I mean, if you think about it, we're almost heading down that same direction. Because if you've seen like the latest announcements by Nvidia or by Boston Dynamics or by Tesla, right, they're all building that humanoid.
Yeah.
And then they're saying we're putting a large language model that's going to reason and think in it. So you've essentially reached iRobot in 3 to 5 years time. And there'll be these robots walking around and doing stuff.
What is your one last tip for entrepreneurs who are building impactful products with AI?
My tip would be that don't get invested too much in a particular approach or a technology or a style, because I've seen that happen with orgs and companies as well. Because you unlike previous generations, like you would invest, let's say 6 months or a year in building something, and then there would be some differentiable moat available. But in Gen AI, the tech changes so fast, right? Like you can have like 2 weeks later, you can be like, oh damn, like everything I built for the last 1 year is not relevant anymore with this new approach.
That's true.
And so be okay and comfortable with that and being able to just
Adapt.
Yeah, adapt and say it's okay if my work goes to waste. Like don't go in the sunk cost fallacy, right? Don't get stuck in that.
Thank you so much. For everyone wondering, yes, there's a Mini Cooper in this office, and I am in the Fluid AI office, and this is by far almost as cool as the Google office, if I can say that.
Almost.
Thank you so much for your time, Abhinav. This has been a great chat,
Absolutely.
and I can't wait to get you on and discuss some more cooler stuff on AI.
Absolutely.